All right, man. I know a lot of people want me to get to talking about Eternals and stuff. I'm not there yet. I have a lot of content dropping this week. Certainly speaking on some of the things that we have not been notified of following San Diego Comic Con. But I wanted this video to be out there because, yes, I've done countless amount of videos talking about this concept of tokenization with classic comic book characters or with comic book characters in general, but also diversity, representation. I've done videos on all of that stuff, and I just want to be very clear, and I want to just drive home this point and why this tokenizing and basically gender bending and race changing characters by way of Marvel is completely inexcusable. And it doesn't matter if it's both in the comic itself, such as what we got with Jane Foster's store, but also with the live action depictions, which we've gotten plenty of. We know we have Black Asgardians, which never makes any sense considering that it's based on Norse mythology. But it's one of those things where they're able to get away with this. They're able to get away with this because of where they're at, right? Where they're at right now, and they have the financial backing and they have the clout. Period. More so, that's with like the movies itself, so they can do things like that. They can bring in goofy characters nobody asked for. They're going to be successful, or at least semi-successful at the very least, because they're at a point right now where they really can't do any wrong. We talked about this in Tokenized Marvel and now Captain Marvel, and how that was a unique shoehorn. I have a video talking about that, and how they kind of sandwiched that. They're really good in terms of marketing and placement, because they sandwiched that movie right in between Infinity War and Endgame, and they were all like, "Hey, this is the new hero," and Kevin Feige's like, "Oh, she's the most powerful superhero, one of the most powerful superheroes in the comics, and will be the most powerful hero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe." He's on record saying crazy stuff like that, and they can get away with that considering that they are doing very, very well in other elements that has little to do with the writing or little to do with the art. But it's inexcusable, and I do believe that their feet should be held to the fire every time they do this. Now let's get the nonsensical non-arguments out, because what a lot of individuals are saying, usually it's normies, and when I use normies, I never use that as a slur, because I do believe that you can be a good person, a favorable fan, certainly, and be a normie, right? Straight up, you can be that. You know what I mean? Like this, I would argue that a lot of my fan base is full of normies, people that don't really read comics. They may be familiar with it in terms of the characters, like maybe in cartoons and of course in the movies, but they don't actually spend all of this money like I do and others that actually collect comic books. And that's not to say that everybody that collects comic books are on the same exact page. No, I do think that there on some subject matters there's general consensus, but not everybody is on the exact same page. But in my experience, people that support this nonsense of tokenizing these characters, they are normies. And what ends up happening is that Marvel announces, hey, this is the character that comes out that's going to be new. And then they'll Google real fast on some fandom site and like, oh, look at this. This is what happened in the comics. This is like, and those are the worst source of normies, because they are speaking on shit that they're not even knowledgeable on, stuff that they looked up 5 minutes ago, right? And then they're trying to present themselves as intellectuals on this topic. I'm not a gatekeeper. I want as many individuals to be involved in comic book culture as possible, because I do think that it's a great way of escapism. However, don't be that guy, right? Don't be that fucking guy. But they will, some of these normies that do tend to do that will throw these nonsensical arguments as in they do this because of diversity efforts, representation efforts. It's not for you. That's why they say, oh, you're an incel. Oh, it's not for you. What about the little girls that want to see themselves? What about the black kids that want to see themselves? And like, all of these nonsensical non-arguments, because it has nothing to do with shit First of all, it's a gimmick of a concept. The fact that you instill this shit in kids in which you're saying that they need to see people that are the same gender as them, the same color as them in order to relate or enjoy something. That's a learned trait. That's something that you idiots are teaching your kids, which is why I say you should take them out of public school. But nonetheless, forget that for a second, and let's focus on the fact that it does not address the actual position. I don't know any comic book fan who criticizes these race and gender changes that's like, I don't want to see any, like, let's say, black people on screen. I don't want to see any, whatever, I don't know, play out on like a female hero. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that. They have to straw man and make shit up to argue against that position. So let's get that out the way. Those are purely nonsensical. They don't give, and this is why they move the goalposts so often. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about the Scarlett Johansson thing, and they don't care. It's like, who cares? The race isn't important to the character. Who cares? And then when ScarJo says what she says, which I believe she kind of backtracked on, they're all like, wait a minute, you can't do, what are you taking roles away from so-and-so? It's like, now you motherfuckers care about race changes now. So they just move the goalposts, and generally all that means is that they are, let me tell you what it means. What it generally means is that they're okay with classically white characters being changed to, let's say, black characters, but they don't like black characters or other minority characters being changed to, like, let's say white or something like that. They won't tolerate that. That's all it means, inconsistency. But again, these are the type of normies that we're dealing with. But it's inexcusable, and this is the overarching point. It's inexcusable. And why is it inexcusable? Because there's mountains and mountains and mountains of goddamn source material out there in which there's so many different characters, right? So many different fresh characters that you can create. All of the black characters that Marvel could be bringing in, instead of tokenizing the ones that exist or bringing in tokenized characters, unoriginal characters, they're sitting on all of these other guys, right? The Brother Voodoo's of the world, and I've talked about this. I've done lists talking about black Marvel superheroes. I've talked about this shit in my streams and my podcast. Like, there's too many different characters to choose from, and it's not just with them. It's with other minority groups as well. But instead of bringing in those, it's like a hand-me-down, right? Because they know these idiots that are obsessed with this race shit will foam at the mouth at this idea, or foam at the mouth of a gender swap, right? Thor, right? Which is the shit. Again, Jason Aaron's, that shit was trash, man. Like, no, normies aren't going to say that because, again, they don't own the comics. And yeah, it would be still going, I believe, if people actually were fond of it. Most, I would argue, fans were not fond of Jane Foster's Thor, but it's a tokenized joke of a character, right? And instead of getting behind the Scarlet Witch of the world, now they have obviously all of these licensing and so forth back. So instead of getting behind some of the X-Men female characters and bringing them in, pushing them in the forefront, the people that they pushed in the forefront are based off of male characters, pre-established male characters. That is Captain Marvel, number one, and now we're getting Jane Foster's Thor, right? Yes, we got one of my favorites in Monica Rambeau, and that is going to be coming, and we'll see how they handle her. I think that they've already botched it in the sense that they have her looking up to Carol Danvers as this aunt figure, which is bullshit, but that's what they do to them. They fuck the black characters up that they bring in, and then they're like, let's go race change the other ones, like, as if this is supposed to be some sort of victory, right? And then when somebody calls it out, they start slinging out these nonsensical arguments, or nonsensical non-arguments. But considering the fact that there's mountains of source material, let's say, of female heroes, there's no reason to be using these copy female heroes, right, as an excuse to bring in female heroes. Same with black characters and so forth. They exist. There's plenty of them. You can find them there's Marvel comic book characters based on them. And if you can't, get somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing to create them. It's no excuse. There's too many talented people out there that can create new characters. And if they fail, try it again. Give somebody else a shot. See if that catches on. It's just a market. Some characters going to succeed. Some characters going to fail. But that's the approach. You don't just fucking keep copying these characters and just reskinning them or regendering them. Like, what the fuck, man? And it's not an excuse. Definitely now, certainly let's talk about Marvel Studios and Marvel Cinematic Universe. Definitely now, considering that they have all of the rights to these characters back with the whole Fox merger and shit like that, there's no excuse. None. And again, nobody's making the argument of they're against female heroes. This is why I said like Scarlet Witch is one of the more favorable characters. Black Widow was one of the more favorable characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Nobody was like, oh, what about these female characters? Why you put, nobody cared. That's some narratives that you dumbasses make up, man. Nobody's tripping off seeing black characters. They just don't want to see tokenized characters. Or this overemphasis on race and shit like that, right? Because every black character has to obsess over that for whatever reason, as if they have nothing else going for them. But all certainly I'm saying is to create new characters or bring in the ones that have already been pre-established, that have already been developed in your comic book, and bring them to the forefront if you want them to be, let's say, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Definitely now, when again, you got the world by the ball sack, man. You can do whatever. You can do no wrong. Even the mildly terrible movie is going to do some success. We saw what happened with Captain Marvel. A character nobody asked for. So it's no excuse when you can't do wrong and you're producing content that people are fiending for. There's no excuse to race change. There's no excuse to race change. None. There's no excuse for it. So I think now more than ever, the shit needs to be, it should be criticized. It should be fucking criticized. Even if you're a fucking normie that doesn't know anything about any of this shit and you're just like, whatever. If you're certainly one of those that cling to this idea that you want to see new characters that have a certain skin tone or something like that, they exist, homie. And they're original. Why are y'all accepting the hand-me-downs from Marvel? Why, we got black or half black Valkyrie, whatever she is, right? We got Heimdall. All these guys are based on Norse mythology. All of them are whiter than white. Yet they have been tokenized. There's two characters. I talked about War Machine, and War Machine, before he was ever War Machine, Rhodey was Iron Man. He was a tokenized Iron Man. War Machine still now is a tokenized Iron Man. That's all he fucking is. There's nothing really original about them. He's just a tokenized Iron Man. These are not original characters. Bishop, Luke Cage, those are more so original characters. Brother Voodoo, you have them. They exist. Storm. Like, those are more so original characters. There's nothing that, there may be other characters with similar powers and such, but they aren't based on those characters, right? They're completely original. Why the fuck can't we just bring them in, right? Why the vast majority of the ones that exist outside of Black Panther's universe, one of my favorite characters, by the way, we're getting Blade finally, another one of my favorite characters. Why is that, aside from that, the Black Panther's own is his universe in a sense, the rest of the characters are just not original. And even with Falcon, who is original, now it seems like they're moving towards Sam Wilson's Captain America. God forbid a original black character stay a fucking original black character. Now we have to take the mantle for some previous fucking white guy, right? Like, that's what they do to black, they fuck them up. And then you get these dipshit normies on Twitter who you can just dangle it race in front of. Yes, this is great. Slate Queen. Like, fool, you're getting characters that aren't even original, bros. They're not original characters. You're getting characters that are reskinned and regendered, that are being pushed in the forefront. Even though they have access to all these characters, and if they don't have writers that are capable of making them likable, then they need to get the fuck up out of there. Y'all got too much money. And I'm pretty sure there's people itching to work for Marvel. It's a cash grab. You somehow was able to get fucking Natalie Portman back in there. So it's like, and clearly people are like, whatever. Like, it ain't nothing to get to have people that want to work for you. So get the losers the fuck up out of there that are completely incapable of writing interesting stories, interesting characters without reskinning them or using copy characters. Get them the fuck up out of there if they can't do the job. Simple as that. But as it stands right now, it is completely inexcusable. It's no excuse. It's fucking lazy, man. It's fucking lazy. All right, I'm going to take this previously established white character that everybody's familiar with, and then I'm going to reskin him. Here, Miles Morales, there you go. Now, that's everybody's favorite tokenized character. He has like one power difference from Spider-Man, and in terms of how he acts, first of all, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, the current run is fucking terrible. But nonetheless, in terms of how he acts, there's nothing that we haven't already seen from a Peter Parker book. All these years, there's nothing original about him. He's just a fucking half-black Peter Parker. That's it. Spider-Verse was what got you guys all in it. But it's still, no matter how you feel about that, it's still an unoriginal character. There are levels to this tokenizing shit, and I get it. Not all, some characters are really, really trash, and some tokenized characters are better than others, such as She-Hulk, which I'd argue that's probably Marvel's best tokenized character. Nonetheless, it's still unoriginal. Like, let's make no mistake. These characters are not original. There are characters that are original. And again, if you can't find them, which they already exist, but if you can't find them, go get somebody that can create them. Hit them up. They exist. But there's no excuse. There's no excuse. None. There's no reason to reskin and regender characters. Sexuality changes all. No. Just create an original character. If he doesn't catch on, like some of the others, which is going to be difficult to do in some cases, because it is a market after all. So if the character doesn't catch on, people are like, I'm not really digging it. Oh, well. Give it another shot. How many white failure of characters have we gotten? It happens. It's a market. Some characters are going to catch on, some aren't. But there's no excuse to not have original black characters, original female characters, and so forth. There's no excuse for it. There's simply no excuse. It's lazy. It's pathetic. We know why you do it. It's a signal because you don't want to work hard in terms of getting that sort of support, so you just want to reskin somebody that people already like and can identify. Thor. People that like and identify Thor, so why don't we just turn them into a fucking female? Why don't we just use Jane Foster and turn them into a female? God forbid using the female Asgardians that already exist. God forbid that. I would have took Danny fucking Moonstar being Valkyrie over her. Like, holy shit. But it's terrible, man. It's terrible. And by the way, I'm not talking about like Brunhild. I'm talking about like Danny Moonstar. Like, I'm not saying I want a Native American like OG Valkyrie. That's not what I'm saying. Valkyrie, there's levels to this Valkyrie shit, right? There's multiple Valkyries. Just say it. Nonetheless, I want original characters. And if you brought in Danny Moonstar, I want to be very clear. I don't want her to be Valkyrie. I want Danny Moonstar to be Danny Moonstar. Let her be that. Let's just go about our business. But these original female characters that exist, I've talked about this. There's way too many of them. You have all of those X-Men, now that you have the rights to them, the Jean Greys of the world, the Storms, Kitty Pryde. Now, maybe you don't want to bring some of those in. Because it's kind of, we just got this X-Men movie, but you do still have other characters that aren't like with that, like Jean Grey and Storm and all that. You still can Rogue, Psylocke, and Enchantress. You can bring in all those, Magic, Emma Frost, Dazzler. And I always talked about how you missed a boat in Moondragon and maybe even File a Veil. Could have hit so many check boxes with that because Moondragon's bisexual. Any of the new Agents of Atlas, I've talked about this, the newer ones, those are new, fresh Asian characters, which is why I love it. Arrow, Wave, White Fox, Luna Snow, Crescent. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. Bring one of them. They're original. I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see this. Well, they got some sort of fucking what K-pop, like I believe it's Luna Snow, and then what's her name's an architect, Arrow. Like those are original Asian characters, female characters. Like hello, they exist. Nonetheless, it's no excuse for Marvel to continue this bullshit.